It's not an accident I have put John Coltrane and Chris Potter in the beginning of this video. But the information I'm going to share with you now is basically general for all the great players. It's not the scales, it's not the music theory. It's really about how all great players play music all the time. Their lines sound so musical. How do they do this? And that's the question I want to dive into in this session with you. Right away, grab the deep dive lesson manual on Patreon, because then you can follow all the material right there. With the lesson manual you can slow down the video and you can pause the video and play the examples in your own pace. And I promise you, you'll get 100% more out of this video when having the lesson manual right next to you and reading along. So grab the deep dive lesson manual on Patreon. The download link is right below in the description. We are going to deep dive into how we are connecting lines. We're going to talk about forward motion, target notes, voice leadings and guide tone lines. And these might be really strong words, but this is one of the things where music actually comes from. So let's make this journey really musical. Grab the deep dive lesson manual and follow this. This simple line is basically taken out of Coltrane's language. It's the 3-bar phrase on the rhythm change C major, D minor, G7, C. And the question is, why is it so natural and why is it flowing? Why does it sound musical? Right back to this Chris Potter line on Body and Soul. In the bridge he's connecting these small motifs. But how is he connecting them? Well, basically the top note is connected to the next top note. And the same goes for the bottom note. He's connecting these bottom notes, so he has big motifs and he's connecting these with a few notes, and you definitely hear the impact of these few notes. And the same is happening in the line I made. Of course not on the level of Chris Potter, but over the whole line I'm starting with the E, D and a B, and at the end of the line I'm leading this into that C at the end. And in the middle of the line I have the D minor G7 where I'm playing the A, G and the F, which leads into the C, D and E. And because I basically stole the whole line from Coltrane, you look at Coltrane's line and he's doing exactly the same thing. He starts on this D, then he hits the E flat going a half step up, another half step on the E, and then he jumps down to that C. Perfect line. So how do we get to that point where we can achieve this, how we can connect these tones so beautifully on the fly when we play? It's about hearing all these connections. You have to have it integrated into your playing, into your ears, into your brains and fingers. So start with playing the basic arpeggios. When you play these, it's really important that you hear these. So don't just play the notes, don't play the ink, play the actual sounds. The second step is picking one arpeggio tone. So I pick the C on the C chord. Then I move this into the C on the D minor chord, the B on the G7 chord and the B on the C major 7 chord in the 3rd bar. Why do I pick these tones? They are on a straight line through the whole progression. So it gives a very simple and melodic line. This movement is called a guide tone line. So out of this guide tone line I make a little melody. The basics are of course the guide tone line, but then I take some chord tones and a bit of scale. It's all C major, and the main purpose is to connect these guide tone line tones with a little bit of scale and the chord tones. What I focus on is hearing the next tone. So I have my guide tone line. I really try to hear that C. Then I'm hearing into that D minor, the C on the D minor, then the B on the G7, then the B on the C major. And that's the purpose of this. Hear the lines in front. When you're doing this, it's called forward motion. You're actually preparing yourself for the sound of that C coming. The most easy way to achieve the hearing is play the guide tone line many times. Repeat making lots of new guide tone lines. Here I'm starting on the G on the C major, the A on the D minor, the G on the G7 and the E on the C major again. Hear those tones in the chord progression. The forward motion. Back to Coltrane, because we have to learn from the masters. He starts on an E. In the 2nd bar he hits a D. And I love how he hits that E flat on that G7. And then at the end he hits an E again. If you play this guide tone line, just those few notes, you really hear the whole progression because it's that clear. And yes, definitely Coltrane played lots of guide tone lines, lots of arpeggios, just to get this into his playing, to know what he was playing, to hear the forward motion. So when you have picked these notes, you use these as target notes. You know you want to hit that D, you know you want to hit that E flat, and you know you want to hit that C. So those are target notes. Let's work with the target notes a bit. I made the same example, the C, the D minor, G7, C, but you see that I left out the G note. So now I have the C, the D, the E. In this line, I only want to focus on how to get to that E at the end, leaving that G open. So I start my guide tone line, I start the line on C, I move into the D. On the G7 I move way up and then I go down to that E, hitting that E beautifully. Still keeping my line C, D and then into the E. So remember, when you're starting this adventure going into these sounds, your lines will not be perfect immediately, but it's about repeating, repeating, repeating. That's why there's tons of examples in the lesson manual. Check out this deep dive lesson manual on Patreon, dig into it and take all the examples there to get a head start moving into these beautiful guide tone lines, target notes and forward motion. In the process of removing these guide tone line anchors, let's remove some more. I play E on the C chord, I leave the D minor G7 completely open and I want to hit an E on the C major chord at the end. Because when you're playing with a strict guide tone line the whole way, you're kind of stuck to this, so it limits you in a way. So try to get less limitations when you play. Play from E to E. The line here is still very much straightforward. I'm playing some C major, then I'm hitting that D because it sounds great, playing anything on the D minor G7, and then I'm hitting that E on the C major. So what we want to do in our playing is get less limitations. I'm starting with an E here and I'm ending with an E. The rest is pretty much up in the open. I play down and then I play way up on the D minor G7 and then I just move down to the E. So the connections between the bars is less now because I removed the guide tone line. I basically just aim for the beginning and the end of the line. Now I said connecting the bars. What Coltrane is doing is connecting all the bars beautifully. This connection is kind of automatic, and in the connection there's a little bit of a guide tone from bar to bar. So they're basically adding these approaches into each bar. Let's do this. I want to stick to this open form from the E to the E, leaving the middle open. So on the C major I make an elaborate line, playing all the way up, adding a triplet. And the same I do on the D minor G7, because my main thing is hitting that E on the C major at the end. So the connection from the beginning to the end is there. So further in the line D minor G7 I connect into that C on the third bar. I'm playing the E and the D and the B leading into that first C on the C major bar. And later in the C major bar I play the A and the F leading into that G, and the F and the D leading into that E. So I'm using all these approach notes, so smaller connecting lines within the chords moving into the next chord. When you're moving tones from your line you're playing into the next line you're playing, directly over, that's voice leading. So I'm voice leading the chords, and this is a beautiful way of connecting the lines. When you put chords in the scale next to each other, you automatically get this voice leading, the one chord leading to the next chord. So now I really want to integrate all the aspects of these lines. Connecting the lines, playing these small motivic phrases and playing the same lines through the whole phrase. Listening to how I can connect each individual tone. I'm looking out for the target notes and really try to nail these when I go through the form to get a fluent melodic line. And within the smaller lines, I move my tones into the next line I want to play, getting beautiful voice leading. I really hope that this method, all the connections, all the voice leading, all the target notes, all the forward motions gets into your playing, because it's very useful and you can play the most melodic and beautiful things. To help you, I have made the lesson manual tool. It really helps you because I've added lots of examples in there you can take and put directly into your playing. The example shows clearly how you can play the guide tone lines, the forward motion, the target notes, and connecting the motives. Download the lesson manual PDF, the link is right below in the description. When you want to dig into more chord structures, I recommend you to check out the next video. This takes you through the basic chords and quickly show you how you can use these, playing target notes, voice leading, and forward motion. Play music, have fun.